The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Happy day before Halloween to all of you. Hope that you're all looking forward to this. Happy, safe Halloween, right? I'm Shannon Penrod. So thrilled to be here with you live this morning. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We've got an amazing guest coming up in just a little while. Judi Uttal is going to be here with us talking about Social Security. And if you have ever had concern about if myself or my child is going to be working, and if that means you're going to lose your Social Security benefits, this is the show for you. We're going to be shedding some light on that because Judi's amazing and has gone and done some amazing work on this. So we're going to be talking with her in about 14 minutes or so. But before that, welcome. As I said, I'm Shannon Penrod. I identify as a proud pony, which is a parent of a neurodiverse individual. So thrilled to be here with you. This is Autism Live on the Autism Network, and our whole mission here is to provide information and inspiration. So that means that starts with individuals who are themselves on the spectrum, however they choose to identify, whether that's neurodivergent, neurodiverse, on the spectrum with autism, or autistic. We love you all. The second part of our group that we include in our larger autism community are individuals who love individuals that I just described on the spectrum, self-advocates, whatever words that they like to use. So we hope that someday that will encompass everyone. Why shouldn't everyone love individuals who are on the spectrum? But those of us who get it want to find out information and support so that we can be there and be good allies for the individuals that we love. So that's what we're doing here. Thrilled to be with you. In just a minute, we're going to get to the jargon. But before that, want to address, and Chris started to show you our fabulous Chris Desmond, who I said this morning, I do not deserve you because he's so good. But he's showing you some of the different ways that you can both watch and listen to the show. You know that if you're watching us on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook. And if you're listening wherever you download your podcast. We are a free download in all of those places. Because we're free, it does mean that you are going to get some ads. And I hope that when you get them, that you embrace those and go, look, these people paid for me to be able to download this for free, and embrace that advertisement. However, some of you have said, gosh, I really would like the option to pay a little myself. And in that way, I'm sponsoring Autism Network, right? But I'd like to have my podcast ad-free. You can do that by going to glow.fm/autismlive. When you subscribe, it's $5 a month. And for that $5, you get everything that the Autism Network does, Autism Live. You get Ask Dr. Doreen, all of the shows that we do, and you get them ad-free. That's $5 a month. So if that's your thing. Otherwise, I hope you rejoice in the free with the advertisements. I know I like that on some of my podcasts. Hey, we're saying good morning to Nicholas. Nicholas, we're thrilled that you're here. I think you're going to love this topic. Anne's here. Anne says, good morning from the Philippines. So great to have you. It is 1 a.m. here and still have work later. I will get back to watch your show later. We're, sending you hearts as well. Thank you, Anne. So thrilled that you could be with us for just a minute. Okay, so also want to say in just a minute, we'll show you, if you didn't get a chance to see it yesterday on Ask Dr. Doreen, we had the fabulous All Ghouls Gala on Saturday, and we're all still recovering from that. We're starting to get caught up on the sleep that we lost, but it was a good time. It was a really good time, and we're still counting the pennies and the nickels. Hopefully there was a lot of money raised. That's not my area of it, but fingers crossed, because that was the whole purpose of it, right? We'll show you a video in just a little while. But first, I want to get to the jargon of the day. If you watch the show, you know that this has been with us from the beginning. We've been doing this for 14 years now. There are very few things I do for 14 years, right? But I felt like this was important 14 years ago. that we talk about the jargon that gets batted around, but in a way that makes sense so that we understand, oh, why is this thing useful to me? So we used to do actual definition and then working definition, and we'd make fun of the actual definition because it was often filled with more jargon. Now we're focusing more on what is AI saying about this definition, and sometimes picking it apart and sometimes embracing it. So we thought we would relook at the three-term contingency, which it sounds like something having to do with physics, doesn't it? Doesn't it sound like what was the thing about the three sun problem or whatever that show was that I did not like on Netflix? I didn't get it. But it's not. It's none of those things. And it's actually the keys to the kingdom when you understand this, because it can help you to deal with behaviors that you're having or behaviors that a loved one is having in a very practical and considerate way. So let's take a look at what our actual definition from AI, actually this one is from, I didn't do it from AI. It's from Applied Behavior Analysis Weekly. There we go. Three-term contingency. The three-term contingency, also referred to as the ABCs of behavior, it's antecedent, behavior, consequence. That's what the ABCs are. Illustrates how behavior is elicited by the environment and how the consequences of behavior can affect its future occurrence. Okay, this is one I want to make fun of. Because, if I really want to know what the three-term contingency is, I'm probably sleep deprived, and I need another dictionary to figure this out. Illustrates how behavior is elicited by the environment and how the consequence, if I already know what it means, I go, oh yeah, no, that makes total sense. But if I don't know what it means, I'm sorry, this would hurt my head and it would not be helpful to me at all. Anyone else? Anyone? Raise your hand. So let's and say thank you, appliedbehavioranalysis.com, and let's go on to something hopefully better. The three-term contingency, often abbreviated as ABC, stands for antecedent, behavior, and consequence. It's a model used to analyze and understand the relationship between behavior and the environment. Okay, I can access that definition, but it really, let's be honest, how does this enrich my life? How does this make me go, oh, okay, now everything's better? It doesn't, but thank you, behavioraltoday.com. Okay, and we're going to throw that in the trash, and then we're going to move on to my little white piece of paper here, which is what I always use to demonstrate to anyone what the ABCs of behavior are. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to fold it into thirds. And by the way, they have these online now. They have apps. You don't have to be folding paper, but this is as old school as it gets, my friends. And on my piece of paper now, I have 3 columns. And all I have to do is write across the top A, B, and C. And now I can take ABC data, which is the three-term contingency. And what the three-term contingency says is that for every behavior that you do, that I do, that, by the way, anything that's living on the planet does, including plants will have behaviors that go into these 3 columns. I've got my A. A is what happened before. That's the antecedent. B is behavior. C is consequence. Okay, the example I always like to give is that every day you get up or you walk into a room and you turn on a light. So at some point, it could be in the morning, it could be in the afternoon. You come into the room or you're sitting in the room and you get up and you turn on the light. So, okay, let's talk about that. What's the A? Well, if I've walked into the room, and there wasn't enough light, so I turned on the light switch. So the A is I walked into the room and there wasn't enough light. The B is that the behavior was that I turned on the light switch. And the C is the consequence, light came into the room. Now, because that worked, I'm going to do this again because I got what I wanted from it, right? So I will have the learned behavior of every time I come into the room and it's dark, I will reach for the light switch and I will turn it on. Let's imagine for a moment that something happens and there's no power in the building. And I come into the room and I turn on the light switch and the power does not come on. I know me, and what I do is I stand there and I flip it on and on because I'm on and off because I'm like, well, it used to work, right? But if it continues to not work over and over and over for months on end, right? I will stop doing this behavior because it doesn't give me a paycheck, right? I will, if it's an abandoned building and I eventually I know, yeah, that doesn't work, the light switch, but I will do it with other light switches, right? This is behavior. This is how we create behavior change, because we have a need, right? That's our antecedent. We engage in the behavior and there is a consequence. And if the consequence goes my way, I will do this behavior again. If the consequence doesn't go my way, I will learn this doesn't work and I will try something else. So why is that important? Why would that matter to anyone? If that is true for absolutely all of us that are living, it is a way for us to shape behavior. I always say to parents, we want to have control over the behavior, don't we? When my son would do things, I was like, I want to get him to stop that behavior. And I thought that that was the key to everything. And what the ABC taught me was I don't have very much control over anyone's behavior. If you decide that you want to come up to me and spit at me, there are very few things that I can do to make you stop if you really want to do that. I can block, right? But you're going to keep spitting. If that is your intention and that is what you want to do, you want to keep doing. And it feels very powerless for the person that this is happening to, right? But as a parent or as a teacher, because I learned this first as a teacher, I don't have control over the behavior. And I need to first acknowledge that that's me just trying to control the behavior is not going to work. But I do have a lot of power over antecedents, and I have sometimes power over consequences. So I might look at, why is this person spitting at me? And if the person spits at me anytime I say fish, I know this is far-fetched, right? But if I say fish and the person spits, I can stop saying fish, right? I could also teach them how to say to me, I don't like it when you say that word, right? That's another thing that I can do that's an antecedent. The things that I do before this behavior needs to happen. But I can also work on consequences, which maybe it's I walk away. And so that I'm not there for them to spit at. That would be a consequence, right? Or maybe I don't give it any attention. In some cases with a bully, we allow the bully, as long as we're not being hurt, to engage in the behavior, and we act as if it didn't happen and we keep on doing. I have to tell you that I had an incident a couple of years ago in a Trader Joe's where, and I didn't mean to have this reaction. I was busy thinking of something, but I was still wearing masks, and there were people who would go to Trader Joe's and they would walk up to people who had masks on. I didn't know about this, and they would cough on them because they thought it was ridiculous that we were still wearing masks. Seems like a weird thing to me. It's like personal choice, whatever. But I walked into Trader Joe's and I was so in my head about something that I was trying to solve, and I had my mask on, and this woman came up to me and she just ran up to me, got very close to me, and just coughed in my face. And I didn't have a reaction. I had no reaction because I was so in my head. And I kind of turned and was like, I don't know what just happened, right? And I just kept going, and everybody was looking at me, and I was like, what just happened? Why did she come up and cough on me? But I didn't do anything. And later when I talked to somebody, they were like, oh my God, you had the perfect response, because what she wanted was for you to make a big deal about it because she wanted the attention of it, and your lack of attention, and you didn't do anything about it, and it didn't become newsworthy, right? I didn't push her away. I didn't call her names. I didn't do anything. I didn't defend myself because I was so in my head. But as a result, very quickly, the people who were doing that realized, oh, nobody really cares. And they stopped doing it. Like they didn't get the attention that they wanted. So there are times when doing nothing, if it's for attention, that is the consequence that then makes that behavior not work, right? So there are lots of ways that we can encourage a behavior by playing with antecedents and consequences. And there are lots of ways we can discourage a behavior by manipulating those antecedents and consequences. If we stop putting so much focus on how do I control the behavior, what are you going to do? Duct tape somebody to a wall, put everybody in prison? You can't do that. There are lots of things we don't have control of. I always go back to the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I can change and the things I can't change. You can't change behavior, but you can manipulate it. by playing with antecedents and consequences. That's the three-term contingency. Hey, Marlene. So thrilled that you're here. Okay, so that's the three-term contingency, and I hope that you will think about this. Think about somebody that you love, don't have to be on the spectrum, and think about a behavior that you wish they would do or a behavior you wish they would do less, and think about, okay, I really don't have control of the behavior, but what do I have control of? Antecedent, what do I have control over? Consequence. And I want to tell briefly the story of the woman that I knew that her husband would always take off his socks and just leave them in the middle of the living room or the bedroom floor. And they wouldn't make their way to the hamper. And she played with this, as we talked about this on the show. And this is years ago. And so she decided to play with this. And so anytime her husband would do something that was fantastic, she would say to him, hey, thank you for doing that. That means so much to me when you do that, right? And she saw a behavior change. And so she started playing with this around the socks, and actually had one of her children put their socks in the hamper, and she praised them and said, oh, I love it when you put socks in the hamper. Said nothing to her husband, absolutely nothing, but said that to the child. Well, that is an antecedent modification, right? And then the husband put the socks in the hamper one day. And what did she do as a consequence of that? She praised him up and down and said, oh my gosh, that's just like an amazing way to tell me that you love me when you put your socks in the hamper. And suddenly the socks were always in the hamper. I'm just saying, this stuff works. And it doesn't have to be just with kiddos on the spectrum. It works with adults that are not on the spectrum. So there you have it. ABC, the three-term contingency. The keys to the kingdom. Okay, so let's talk about Judi. And I always mess up how to pronounce Judi's name. But, I have to go to the gala first. Thank you, Chris. Chris reminding me. We have to go really quickly to, we want to show you a short video about what it was like on Saturday night at the All Ghouls Gala. So take a look at this and we'll be back with Judi. It was a really good time, you guys. It was off the hook. Can I just say? Let me tell you about Judi. And I only got to meet Judi a couple of months ago for the first time. But what an amazing woman she is, and what a pleasure it is for us to welcome her to the show. She is the president of the Orange County Asperger's Support Group. For short, that's OCASG, a nonprofit organization improving the quality of life for individuals and families dealing with high-functioning autism. Judi is a member of the Competitive Integrated Employment Blueprint, that's a mouthful, Orange County Local Partnership Agreement. So that's the OCLPA, and the Thompson Policy Group Chapman University Transition Initiative. In 2022, she founded the Autism and Entertainment Work Group and is leading the Autism and Entertainment Conference, which was held in the spring of 2024. Was an amazing success. Judi retired from a career as a high technology marketing executive. Thank goodness, she's so good with technology, because I bow to her for that. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Math Computer Science from UCLA and an MBA from the Tepper School of Management at Carnegie Mellon University. She is married and is the mother of a 33-year-old son who was diagnosed with high-functioning autism at the age of 3. Her son graduated from California State University, Fullerton, with a major in cinema and television. And she is here today to talk with us about some really important stuff having to do with employment and Social Security. So let's welcome Judi to the show. And Judi, I think I said your name. I pronounced your name wrong earlier. Say your last name for us.
Uttal.
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 And I said Uttal. So it's like Utah with a tall. Uttal. I'm going to remember that from now on. So, Judi, welcome back to the show. So thrilled to have you.
It's so good to be here.
Such a pleasure to have you back with us. So, you are here today to talk about issues with employment and Social Security. And I want to recap for our viewers. How did you get interested in this?
Sure. And thank you for having me. And part of the reason I thought of you was this issue actually came up in one of the conversations you and I had when we were talking about the conference. And that was how people were fearful of losing their Social Security benefits.
Yeah.
So
because I mentioned to you, we've had that problem here at the network that, when we've gone to hire someone, whether it's an intern or actually hire someone, because, we want to be living our ideals like everybody else, but we ran into people who were fearful, and parents who were fearful. And boy, talk about saying something to the right person. I sort of mentioned that to you in passing, and you took that ball and you ran. Girl, you're impressive.
I was already running. I kind of went back and looked at where did I get started with this particular issue. So my son is on SSDI right now, but he had previously been on SSI, which are government benefits through Social Security. They're different, and I'm not going to go into the complexity of what they are, but they basically provide some financial benefits to individuals with disabilities. And he was going to work. We were working on a PIP, and I started looking into the rules related to working and collecting Social Security. And a red flag went up, and I just kind of put that in the back of my mind. And then as the president of Orange County Asperger Support Group, I am involved in lots of different groups. Some, Shannon, you mentioned in terms of OCLPA. Also, on occasion, I've been involved with the Stanford Neurodiversity Project. And at one point, Lawrence Fung, who runs that, said to me, does anybody have any concerns about Social Security for the neurodivergent population? And I said, yeah, I do. And he says, well, would you write something up? So I wrote it up, and then started meeting with a variety of people, and it just kind of died. We kind of recognized that there were some problems, and it just kind of died. But it was a piece of work that I had done. Then, if you remember, when Biden got elected and started serving in 2021, his theme was Build Back Better. And there were a series of Build Back Better meetings in California, and we ran one of those. And the purpose of those were to have discussions, guided discussions with people to find out what were their issues related to them moving forward in their lives. And so I ran one, and it was really focused on employment and trying to figure out what was blocking people from employment. And so I have my notes here from November 17th, 2021. And that was when, again, that issue came up again. And it said, the question was, what barriers have you or the people with disabilities in your life experienced in accessing the supported need to prepare for employment, find a job, or participate in the workplace? And sure enough, I remember hearing the conversation about this, but people indicated that individuals with disabilities fear that they will lose their benefits if they become employed. This eliminates an important safety net and is very likely, in the very likely event that the job does not work out. And my experience in working with this population is that sometimes they find work, sometimes that works. And during COVID, this was the first group that was laid off. And so again, I recognize this as an issue. So as a member of the Orange County Local Partnership Agreement, we have a bunch of different subcommittees. And I brought up this issue. And there was a parent who was also on the committee with me named Melissa. And I had noticed she was being very depressed. And this was in that same kind of beginning of 2022. And I called her up and I said, Melissa, what's going on? And she told me this story about her son, Taylor, and him losing Social Security and all the things that she went through. And I said, okay, enough. I keep on hearing this issue or bringing up this issue. Let's work on it. So that is kind of the story of how I got started with working on Social Security and the issues of losing the benefits when people start to work.
But I love, and I want you to tell our viewers, because you always ask questions. You asked a lot of questions before you look to fix something. You looked to identify the problem. So I want you to talk about what your committee did and what your work product is for that, because it's kind of interesting.
Absolutely. So we started meeting as a small group within Orange County, and we started analyzing what was broken. And we actually wrote a white paper with 64 different problems identified, but not only the problems, the solutions. And then many people on that committee were really convinced that we had something there, and we expanded to a statewide initiative. And so I've been meeting statewide for the last couple years with people from Disability Rights California, Department of Rehab, regional centers, the Association of Regional Centers, agencies, Lou Vismara, who wrote a book on the government and employment and autism. So a wide variety of folks. And we started working as a team. And one of the things that we decided to do was a survey. We wanted to collect stories. And so we implemented a year ago in July of 2023, we implemented a survey across California, and we ended up getting over 605 responses.
Nice.
A huge number of responses. And I'd like to share what that survey said.
Absolutely.
So let me share my screen here.
And I want to thank you for this work too, Judi. Great. We've got it now on the screen.
It is amazing work. You know, my background's technology and marketing, and I often do surveys. And you always want the surveys to tell you what you think, and a lot of times they don't say it clearly.
Mm-hmm.
This survey screams at you and says, you're right, you're right, you're right.
Yeah.
So this issue of fear of this survey of over 605 people across California, which included 43 of the 58 counties, it was done by 52% of the people responding were dealing with autism and maybe other issues. 29% had intellectual disabilities, 7% cerebral palsy. So it was the right population. And 86% of the responses were from parents or representative payees, which is the title of someone who is responsible when your child gets Social Security for managing the financial side of it.
Yeah.
And so it yelled at us. Yes, we are scared to work because we are worried about losing our benefits. 42% said this is a major factor.
Yeah.
Okay, so people are fearful. And when you think about it, Shannon, we spend so much effort trying to get people to work. There are, the whole Department of Rehabilitation. There are all sorts of things going on in schools everywhere trying to get this population to work. And there's this huge boulder blocking them, which is this fear of Social Security.
Yeah.
So this survey has a lot of questions. I'm not going to go into all of them, but one of the key questions was, is this fear based on reality? Is this fear based on reality. And when we looked at the population that responded to the survey and focused in on those who had worked previously or were currently work, which was about 40% of the respondents, and it was about evenly split between people who had previously worked and were currently working, 75%, 3/4 of the people who responded in that category had encountered a real problem with Social Security. Okay. So this fear is not unjust. It is a fear based on the real life experience of the people who have either worked or were currently working.
Kind of amazing, right?
It is amazing. Okay, so what kinds of problems did they run into? 76% of those got overpayment notices.
Wow.
And we can talk, once I go over this with me, Shannon, we can talk a little bit more about their stories and about what this means.
Yeah.
39% had their benefits terminated. You're done. That's 40% of the population actually lost their Social Security benefit. 15% lost their medical insurance. So a lot of times when you get SSI or SSDI, it's coupled with medical insurance. Medi-Cal, if you're on SSI, and you eventually can get to Medicare with SSDI. And 11% were told, you know what? You're no longer disabled. So this survey really, and you can stop sharing here, this survey really shared how crazy the system is. And it was, and as I shared it with people, they said, oh, it's not just me.
Right. Right. Well, this is a sharp point, right? A very sharp point. That this is not in anybody's heads. This is a real thing that's happening, and the fear is real. I especially have heard from parents who very much want their children to be independent. Their adult children, I should say, and they are excited about their children having the opportunity to work, but the fear, and we talk about this a lot on the show, that, you know, you want your children to be independent, but you want your children to be safe, right? And that often these two things butt heads with each other. And what I'm hearing from a lot of parents of kids who are older is, I am now worried about what happens when I'm not here. And I don't want them to lose their benefits. And it seems like if they go to work, they're going to lose their benefits. And then if they lose that job for any reason, I won't be here to advocate for them to get those benefits back. And we've just seen that's not a crazy thought.
No, and you know what, your educational moment was about ABC, right?
Right.
This is the consequence of working.
Yes.
What kind of positive consequence is it to lose your benefits?
Yeah.
To get, you know, this struggle of dealing with Social Security is painful.
Oh.
And people wrote long stories in the survey about what they went through. And 40% of those that had run into problems were still dealing with their problems. Yeah. They were not resolved.
Right.
But, you know, it's...
Talk a little bit about the overpayment, because people who aren't a part of this may not know what that is.
Yeah, let me explain that. That was the most common thing. And from the survey results, it wasn't something that just happened once. This happened multiple times. So basically what happens is Social Security occasionally reviews your file. And when they do, they go back in time to, like, I'm going through it right now with my son. They wanted his payroll information all the way back to 2010.
Wow.
We're going through it right now. So we had to give them 14 years of employment history. So you better be a good little saver of your documentation if you're on Social Security. Well, then what they decide is, at any point in that time period, do we think that they no longer qualified for Social Security? Okay. It could be, if you're on SSI, you're not allowed to have more than $2,000 of liquid assets. So that may be savings bonds, it may be money in the bank. But if you are $1 over that $2,000 limit, then you are no longer entitled to benefit from Social Security. So it could be that at one time you got an extra check, and there were stories of people who got extra checks during COVID, which wasn't supposed to count.
Right.
But anyway, back to the explanation of overpayment. So what they do when they decide you're no longer eligible, because during that, for me, that 14-year period of time, there was a moment in time when they no longer thought our son Joshua was eligible. They then could ask for all the benefit you received since that point and ask for that money back. So it's like, could be 10,000, it could be 18,000. Who knows what it could be, because there's no limit on the time frame that they could go back. It's kind of like, let's say you checked out a library book in kindergarten, and then you graduated from high school 18 years, or 13 years later. And then they say, we went back and looked at all the records so that you could graduate. And we found out that in kindergarten, you had an overdue book. And you know what? You can basically pay for a new library for us because that's how much you owe us. Yeah. And that's what it's like with dealing with Social Security. And you are the victim. You have no recourse in terms of telling your story. You try, there's ways, there's hearings, there's ways of appealing. But the process is very difficult and takes a lot of time. And in the meantime, if you're dependent on that Social Security benefit for medical insurance, because a lot of these people have other kinds of health issues, or for your financial solvency, you just do not have that cash coming in. And imagine, many of us are baby boomers, we're getting older. And imagine if these parents were here to help deal with this situation. Somebody who is having this happen to them in their 50s and doesn't have any loved ones around is really in a very difficult situation.
Well, and I guess my first question on this is, how long ago was that $2,000 chosen? Because to have no more than $2,000 worth of assets at any point in time seems very discriminatory and like forced poverty. Because, if that was in 1950, maybe $2,000 went a lot further. But in 2024, having less than $2,000 worth of assets at any time, depending on where you live here in Los Angeles, that is poverty.
Yes. These numbers have not been adjusted for inflation at all. There are legislative initiatives about raising the amount of money. One thing that got put in place, which for the smart parent is a useful device, is called the ABLE account. Right. And the ABLE account was set up so that the $2,000 limit could be expanded. So you can put savings and things in your ABLE account, but you have to be aware enough to know that, and that money doesn't count against that $2,000. But a lot of people who are on Social Security aren't aware of these things. And so it really puts them in jeopardy and punishes them for not necessarily being a college graduate and knowing everything that's going on with the Social Security laws.
Wow. Okay. And you can imagine the stress if you're living largely with less than $2,000 of assets at any time. It's impossible to live any other way than paycheck to paycheck, depending on where you're living. right? And then to suddenly be told we're stopping those benefits. Oh, and by the way, you owe us $10,000. Let's all just imagine the stress of that for a minute. It's not fair. It's not right. And it is why so many parents are concerned and saying, yeah, I'm not going to push for my child going to work. Not going to do that. It's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. I want you to talk about more, but I want to say we're not going to leave in this space. Judi's going to tell us some things that we can all be doing in a couple of minutes so that we can be changing this forever. But what else is happening that you need to tell us before we get to the what can we do? Or should we move on to the what can we do?
Well, I think maybe we can move on to the what can. I could tell you some stories and stuff, but if we want to go through why don't I tell you where we're going from here, and then I can share what people can do. How about that?
Sounds like a plan. Sounds like a plan.
So Shannon has mentioned that I ran the Autism and Entertainment Conference. I have been very, very busy. There's other things, and I'll come back on the show to talk about those later, Shannon. So I only finished doing the analysis of the survey in September. And so now we're in the next phase, right? And so this committee, we will be reaching out to government officials to talk to them about this problem. And we're trying to focus on PR and getting the word out. And so that's part of the reason I'm here. It is an election year. We're all feeling it. And so you need to be mindful of the impact of your vote on programs like Social Security. So I just want to frame that. And then that's kind of holding me back from really reaching out to government officials, because I don't know who is going to be in charge in January. And so depending on how this election happens, which right now is less than a week away, it will really impact the motivations and who we work with. So there's a lot of communication that we need to do over the next period of time. How can you help? Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, so I've created a link tree. It's called Afraid to Work, and you can, I think Shannon can put it in the chat, but it's if you just put Linktree, which is down below, linktr.ee/afraid to work, you can go there. And this has the following things. One, it has I mentioned this this other mother who was on the OCLPA, who had a horror story. If you want to watch the video of that horror story, you can watch it. And it's about a 9-minute story of what she's still going through with her son, Taylor.
Wow.
When all this was happening, before I even formed the committee, I wrote a petition. I had this little experience down here in Irvine and learned the power of petitions. And so on change.org, there's a petition you can sign, which at this point we're at 1,000, and that's before this new push. So the more people we can get to sign it, the more of an impact I think we can have when we talk to our government officials. There's an infographic that you can look at that tells a story, and it also shares the top 9 solutions that we're proposing. And so maybe we can go into a little bit of that, Shannon, when we're done. And then the complete white paper that has all 64 solutions broken down into, is it legislative change? Is it changes to the software? Is it changes to training, etc.? So I invite you to go to this Linktree site and to sign my petition. So maybe I'll share one more thing while I have the screen here. And this is the little infographic that shares, that you'll be able to download, that on one side shares all the problems. Oh, it's not showing up. Here we go. So on one side, it shares the statistics that I shared with you in this meeting, and also a summary of some of the problems that people encountered. And then on the back side, it highlights 9 simple solutions that could significantly lower the number of cases and reduce costs for the government by being more fair to this population. So I'm going to stop sharing there, and maybe we can talk a little bit more, Shannon.
Yeah. Now, I know Chris put in the @afraid_to_work. Julie was asking for the link, and we'll try to get that. But do you want to say it one more time what the link is?
Yeah.
We'll put it in the chat. We'll put it in the chat. Don't worry about it.
Okay, I'll put it in the chat.
You don't have to do that right now.
Yeah.
Okay. I know. We're asking you to do 38 things.
I need Marlene. She's coming back.
Marlene, if you can share, because Marlene's there with us. If you can share the link, Marlene, that would be great in the chat. That would be superlative. But yeah, so what can I do today? Because I couldn't read it on the screen. What kinds of things can I do today, Judi?
Well, I think one, you can be aware. I think you need to, if your child is going to be working, be sure that you're aware of the procedures that you need to follow when they're on Social Security. Be sure to keep your documentation. Be sure to keep all the pay stubs. So, DOR and Regional Center have benefit planners that will review what all the rules are and how to follow those. So be sure to get trained. Be sure to be aware of what those are. But be also aware that they're going to tell you everything's going to be fine. They're kind of paid to tell you everything's going to be fine. And you're going to end up making more money than you'll lose. And they don't realize that these jobs are transitory sometimes.
Yes.
Paid, you have to declare a paid internship that you're not even really earning the money. It's coming from the government. And still that counts towards showing that you have that you've met a substantial gainful employment level. So just be very mindful that this could happen to you. It happens to 74%, 3/4 of the people who do work. And as you meet other people and they're fearful, tell them that their fear is real and help them understand. Those are, I think, the things that you can do for yourself is really to be aware that this is a real problem, really be aware that you need to keep good records because someday you may be in a lawsuit, and be sure and, be mindful that this could happen to you.
I have to be honest, Judi. I am a pack rat. I'm a terrible pack rat, and I keep way more things than I should. And people always tell me, you got to stop keeping all the paperwork that you keep. But I'm terrible that way. But I was always told, because I used to teach college. And when you teach college, you have record keeping things that you have to do. You have to maintain, keep records of your grades, because if somebody comes back and there's a question with a transcript, whatever, you have to keep very specific records. But for everything, I was always told 7 years. 7 years worth of taxes, 7 years worth of grades. And I have found repeatedly that is malarkey, that I have had taxes come back and want something from 20 years ago. A piece of paper that they said I didn't file that I was able to find and go, yeah, I did. Here it is. And they were going to take money from me, but I had the piece of paper. It's shocking to me that you've been asked. Even the pack rat that I am, my son's been working the last couple of years, and I told him, you want to keep pay stubs and things for 7 years. And I have friends who are like, why on earth would you keep pay stubs? There's no reason to keep pay stubs for even 7 years. But now I'm thinking, thank heavens he hasn't worked for 7 years, because you're telling me your son had to provide it for 14 years?
Right.
That's
14 years.
crazy.
And I'll tell you the little story of that, right? My son doesn't live with us anymore. He moved into a condo during the middle of COVID. And so he occasionally brings his mail to me. He's not comfortable going through his mail. And sometimes I get it every day, and sometimes I don't get it every day.
Right.
And for me, it was a holiday in October, and I was getting ready for dinner and for services. And Josh came over and dumped a pile of paper. And he had dumped a pile of papers like a couple days before, and I thought I had gone through them, but they had piled up on our buffet, and I was cleaning it off so that I could serve some food. And all of a sudden, there was a big packet from Social Security.
Wow.
And I said, what is this? And so I opened it up, and it had a letter dated like 3 weeks before saying that I had 15 days to complete all this information. And I called up Social Security right away. And luckily I got a hold of someone, and I said, is this 15 business days? Because I was way past the 15 days already. Right. So you can imagine the panic that I was feeling. And luckily that was the 15th day. It was 15 business days. So I said to my brother, you finish cooking the lamb. I've got work to do.
Yeah.
And luckily I had all the documentation and all the information that I could put it together, and I got the fax number and the name of the worker who was working on it, and I faxed it all to him, and then I sent him a letter with the fax and the proof that the fax went out. I keep trying to call this guy, Mr. Madrid, out of the Mission Viejo office. He has yet to pick up the phone or yet to return my phone call. and that's, just this phase. So I know I'm going through reviews. So I'll tell you how it's impacted me, knowing that he's going through a review, which, by the way, he has never earned anywhere close to substantial gainful employment.
Right.
He has never come close. He's currently not coming close. But still, I'm nervous. And you know what? I'm at an age where I could start collecting Social Security. I kind of was going to put it off till I reached a certain age. But I thought, you know what? I read stories from this survey of people who when they were trying to switch to, let me explain how this works. Let me take a step back. When you start taking your Social Security, if you're a parent, when you start taking your Social Security, at that point, if you have a child with a disability, you can have them collect 50% of your benefit. So this is an additional 50% because you still collect the same benefit. They can collect 50% of your benefit as an adult child beneficiary.
Right.
It's called Title II or SSDI. And my son has been on my husband's as Social Security for some time. And part of the reason I want to do that is the rules about employment and all sorts of things are better with SSDI than they are with SSI.
Oh, interesting.
We can go into these. There's just so many. It's the most complicated Parker Brothers game ever.
Right. You've
played the game of life. This is the game of life with Social Security.
Wow.
So that said, I knew my benefit would have been bigger, but I was holding off doing it. But I figured, you know what? With changes that are going to likely happen with this government, depending on how the outcome of elections, with him already going through this review, it would just make sense for, I might as well take my Social Security now and just get this, rip the Band-Aid off and go through it. So I actually, a week ago, signed up for my Social Security. So I now know that he's going to we're going through this review already, might as well add knowing that I don't have to go through it again when we try to move him to my benefit. So that's like just an example of a little piece of the complexity. And at least with my knowledge, I'm able to maybe manage this better.
Yeah.
But there are just so many things. So maybe we can take a couple minutes and talk about some of the
well, we've only got a couple of minutes left.
Or we may not have time. I don't know. Whatever you want to do,
we only
Shannon.
have a couple of minutes left, so it's up to you. But I also want you to give us an update on autism and entertainment. Just a brief one.
Okay, sure. So we had the fantastic conference in April. Shannon was there. She helped present some prizes for people related to the surveys that we did. So thank you, Shannon. But we've continued since then. We do monthly webinars. We have had them on Ubisoft's program for their neurodiverse population. We've talked to actors, writers, voice actors about and had webinars that were put on by Britton Payne, who is a attorney at Nickelodeon. So we've had regular events. We've had events at the Laugh Factory with autistic comedians. We have just have had a lot of great stories in Variety. I got to go to Comic-Con because our documentary on Danny Bowman was featured. And so the group of us have gotten to go there. And so there is just a lot happening. I will put the website for Autism and Entertainment in the chat. I also, by the way, Chris had put the link to the Linktree site for Social Security. But, get involved. The purpose of this group is to really change the dynamic in Hollywood to increase employment for individuals with autism in entertainment-related fields. So it's a great organization, and, we're seeing people play. So that's kind of a quick update on that.
You're doing amazing work, Judi. Now, for either of these things, if people have questions, if they have questions about the Social Security, I know that Marlene also put in the chat that everybody on Facebook should be able to see that the link for ocaspergers.org and the link for Autism and Entertainment. Are those the best places to go if they have questions?
Yeah. Just you could post a question in there, and Marlene will make sure I respond to it.
Okay. You're the dream team.
I think we're going to do things like webinars and things like that, because this is it. Both of these issues are major, right?
Well, they're
Shannon?
hand in hand too.
Oh, national issues.
Yeah.
I mean, international on the autism and entertainment, but this is a national issue, and so we need to do more to make people aware and to mobilize Social Security and our government to address these problems. And there's some things we could do maybe locally in California to help fix these problems. So, we need to continue this conversation.
We do.
Into the future.
And honestly, I see them going hand in hand, because if you've got, let's say you've got a brilliant animator, somebody who is wanting to, a career in entertainment is a long one, where you're a journeyman and you're an apprentice and you're working your way up. You don't just get handed the job and say, hi, you're the full animator for the Disney film. You need to work your way up to that. And if we are leaving out the phase where they can work up to it because they're too afraid to do that phase and lose their benefits, then later on they're not going to be the full animator for that film. And that's just animation. Think about that with absolutely everything.
It's everything, because you can't be scared to get started.
Right.
And an issue is people are told don't work as many hours, so you don't hit that level. And what does that do? One, it prevents you from earning more money, but it also serves as a disincentive for the employer who doesn't want you only to work 12 or 20 hours a week. And all the effort that's being put into raising the minimum wage, because these government measurements are not modified and are not adjusted for inflation, you can trigger reviews or no longer receiving benefits at a much lower rate of hours worked. So, you're absolutely right. The two go hand in hand. It's all about what can we do to get these people employed and happy and have Social Security be a safety net.
Yes.
Not a deterrent from being employed.
And in some cases, not being the one solution. Because in fact, if we could allow people to go through the phases when they're apprenticing and learning their craft in any industry, but let's just say in the entertainment industry, that then they become people who are gainfully employed and don't need Social Security, then that's an entirely different thing. And that should be what we're all working towards. That is not going to be everybody's story, though. And we need to make sure that the safety net is there to catch them if they are not successful at that. That's a real thing.
Things can happen, right?
Yes.
Let's say your parent dies and it sends you into an emotional whirlwind.
Yes.
All of a sudden, you may not be able to work.
Exactly. Or
let's say that you're working because you have this amazing boss who's really supportive of you, and then that boss gets terminated because
retires.
Because they're too, whatever reason, corporate America, they've been part of a merger. All of a sudden, you lose your job, and it's not that easy to find the other job. So there are so many scenarios where even if you have worked for a while, you may not be able to find a job in the future, and we should have a benefit that's protected.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you so much for your time. I hope you have happy, safe Halloween if you celebrate. And I want to thank everybody for being here, and Marlene for putting in the links, and Chris for being so go with the flow. And we'll welcome you back when you have more time, Judi, to talk about more things. All right?
Yeah, I have another topic I want to talk about, but we'll figure out the best time to do that. Okay. But thank you so much for having me, and thank you everybody for watching.
Take care. Bye-bye. Okay, you guys, we are back on Monday. I'm trying to put my weeks together. We're back on Monday. We've got great shows for you next week. I know everybody's got a lot going on, but we will be here talking sense. That's all I can say. So join us next week, and we will look forward to having you then. Until then, give your kiddos a hug for me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.